The first of it was an encounter in a field. This happened after both had said yes, both that were a body each, a fine body apiece, and 2 yeses, and this was the green light. And the field was dark, entirely dark, and this was because of the night, but also because everything within it and everything that was to happen within it were entirely unknown. And I liked this very much. There was a mystery to it, and an eros. Well, so much eros. The field was made of it. The air crackled with the frequency of it, an all-night radio station blasting out endless tunes dictating the movement of our limbs, our hands, our lips. There really was no way to tune out of it, nor would we have wanted to. We came to the field because we wanted to. And the telling of things is a curious thing, because it never goes that one can speak one thing and then another just in the order as they happened. This is not how they appear in the mind. In the mind, or should I say in the psyche. The psyche, then, is a Gothic painting where the size of things or of people reflects their relative importance in the mind of the painter. And so in this painter's mind, the happy happenings in the field in the nighttime are almost entirely eclipsed now by what came after, hardly recalled, hastily sketched with a few brush strokes on the edges, nothing more. And what came after is remembered, and remember that it was nighttime, so I could not see, and I moved by instinct alone. And I like this very much, but all the same it is true that I could not see, and so I could not see that a yes had turned to a no in the dead of night. And so I slammed with all the weight of my body and all the weight of my yes into this surprising and unexpected no of the other. Bam! And at first my head was spinning, and I was disoriented as all fuck, and I didn't understand, as of course you wouldn't understand. Anyone who has ever received a sudden blow to the head will know that at first you do not understand. And so I stood, not understanding. I stood very still, but my head was very spinning. And when I touched a hand to my very spinning face, I felt the warmth of my very own good blood slowly trickling downward. I sifted the evidence, and slowly, gradually, the facts began to trickle through. A yes had turned to a no. So that was it. And then the cold set in. Very suddenly, my moments ago hot limbs turned to ice as the temperature dropped below 0, and my body shook in shock, shook my body. And still my eyes, my very own eyes, instinctively searched for their counterparts in the dark, hoping to find something there, an explanation, a something that would help me bridge the inexplicable discontinuity of 2 moments, a way to make shared meaning. But there was only a cold I had not seen there before, the blandness of an almost stranger's eyes, and no shared meaning to be made. But a meaning was there nevertheless. A yes had turned to no. And the rest was meteorology. Destructive weather systems where hot and cold air suddenly meet produce powerful water-laden clouds that hang at high altitude isolated depressions over many hours before releasing extreme volumes of water, devastating flash floods that wash away people's homes and their streets and some of their lives. And therefore, because we have meteorologists on the news explaining such phenomena to us, I should not have been surprised at the cataclysmic quantity of grief that was precipitated when my hot atmosphere hit this unexpected cold front. Nor is surprised the word I want, not surprised as much as reeling. Reeling I was and gasping as I was swept away by floods of tears, spinning flotsam pushed under and coming back up, and no end in sight to these terrible waters. Waters that flooded now also the ancient wells and the ancestral wells and the wells that had been stopped up with heavy lids of concrete never to be opened. But these heavy floods now tore off those heavy lids and mingled the new grief with the old grief, my own grief from times past and the grief of my ancestors. And now all the grief combined in the streets, the grief of all of my lifetime and the grief of all of the lifetimes that went before me, and the grief of the hope that died in a field. And I have not seen the end of it. It clings to me still like waterlogged clothing, and I like it not very much. I like not the hopelessness of it, for grief is a tracing of the shape of an absence, is running my finger along the edges of a hole where what I want is not. And who could derive hope from that? And hope is not derived from that, but from the sun when it re-emerges and dries your clothing, from the gentleness of a cool breeze and the kindness of leaf-sprung soil, a soft bed for the body. And hope is derived from the immeasurable kindness of friends, and best of all from the cheerful insouciance of the inner child who loves only me and doesn't give a toss about bins in fields. And hope is derived from things that have nothing whatsoever to do with grieving. And in that way, in the way that the water gradually recedes, and in the way that the sun dries up the receding water, in that way also the grief is receding, and I like this very much. And weighing it all up, everything that happened, holding it in my hands and weighing it up, I see that the weight feels good in my hands, the weight of everything that happened. And I see that my hands are good to hold weight of joy, and weight of grief, and weight of yes, and weight of no.